Yeah, a lot of the things I did in games were probably things that I tried in the backyard many times. I remember a try I scored against New South Wales in a Queensland primary schools team. It was a 6-stone team. We were playing out at Endeavour Field, Cronulla Sutherland's home ground, and we took a kick for touch. We had a penalty about 10 metres out from the line. We kicked the ball out, and the ball probably went across the sideline about a foot short of the line, and the hooker went up to take the tap. And it just ran straight through my mind. I remember I used to do things in the backyard and playing there against my brothers, and I ran up and I grabbed the ball off the hooker and I said, I'm taking that tap, that's mine. And he looked at me and just gave me the ball, and I went up and turned my back to the New South Wales players, only 1 foot out from the try line, and I put the ball down and I said, come onto the ball, fellas, run onto it. And of course all the New South Wales guys braced themselves, ready to tackle this guy that was running onto the ball. And I simply just bent down, tapped the ball and put it backwards between my legs onto the try line. And the referee ran from the try line back to where he expected the play to be after the front row running onto the ball, received it, and he sort of looked around and said, what's going on? And the touch judge looked down and I said, it's a try. I put the ball down on the try line. And the New South Wales guys looked around and one of them said, he can't do that. And the touch judge came in, he said, yes, he put the ball on the try line. And I'd probably done that in the backyard 10 or 15 times in the games that I played against my brothers. So it's just funny some of the time how things that seem so indifferent or not at all important that you do in the backyard finally come to light. When I was a kid, it was very humiliating to go along to Lang Park and watch the Maroons get thrashed year after year after year. We were always hopeful that we were going to be able to beat the mighty Blues, but we always left Lang Park very disappointed. So that provided pretty automatic motivation for myself and a lot of the other Queensland players when we faced the New South Wales fellows in State of Origin series. And it's become apparent now that a lot of the New South Wales supporters find it very hard to accept that Queensland have been State of Origin champions for 9 of the 12 years. We've beaten them again and again and again, and still they refuse to admit that Queensland are champions. All of a sudden, arrows were pointed at me. He's arrogant, he does this, he does that, and people come up with their own reasons. I mean, in the space of 2 weeks, the rumours that were flying around town why I was sacked as Broncos captain were absolutely ridiculous. I mean, it just about got to the point where I was responsible for a shotgun murder at one stage. But it was absolutely crazy. I was supposed to be in trouble with the police. All I wanted them to say was, if I was sacked, we've sacked him because he's not a good captain. And I don't believe that I was being a bad captain on the field. And I believe that any footballer should be judged by his performance or ability on the football field. If he's a good player or a good captain, then he gets credit for it. If he's not, well, he gets rejection. So if I wasn't a good captain, I just wanted them to say, hey, we think you're a bum captain, we don't want you anymore. Unfortunately, that wasn't the way it was done.
Played back to Mark Murray. Away to Lewis. The long pass, and that is a long pass to Miles. Then away to Meninga. Out wide to Dale Shearer. Shearer going for the corner. Grove gets in. No, he doesn't. He goes for the line. He's in.
backyard games are often Queensland versus New South Wales. I think my brothers always wanted to be New South Wales because New South Wales always beat Queensland. I loved being a Queenslander and hopefully I was going to beat them one day, but I think those dreams I had were often the same dreams that the Queensland players in those days had. Perhaps we'll beat New South Wales this game. Will it ever happen? Those dreams often came true for me in the backyard when I did play against my brothers, but they were 3 or 4 years younger than I was. And I just thought to myself, well, maybe it is a dream, but I've got to wait and find out whether I'm going to make it or not.
The Lewis's family home in the working-class suburb of Cannon Hill, where Wally's father Jim helped develop his legendary footballing skills.
He was always in a hurry to do everything, Wally. Even when I was carrying him, boy, did I know I was alive. I think he was kicking footballs then, actually. From the time Wally was born, we knew, you know, that he's going to achieve something. That's probably a big statement, but Jimmy gave him a number the day he was born, actually, in the hospital bed. He came up to me and he says, "Oh, I've got number 8 picked out for him." That was and you know, he wore that for many years. He was a lock.
I played a bit in that position and I thought it was the best position on the field. Well, you can please yourself what you do it. Lock forward those days. He was a sort of a rover sort of thing. And I just liked the position and I thought, well, that's as good a position to play as any. You're not in the real heavy stuff. And, well, you can get involved in it. But that was just my idea. I thought it was an ideal position.
We always used to have a time limit in the game, you know, that we were going to, when we were going to finish, my sister would be the timekeeper and my brother scored a try with about 30 seconds to go in this game. So after he scored the try, I said, "Hurry up and take the kick at goal," and I kicked off to him again. I thought, well, he's beat me. I can't beat him here. He ran, I picked him up and I spear tackled him and he landed on the little foot-wide cement track that we had leading up to our clothesline. He snapped his collarbone and he started screaming and I said, "If you go up and tell Mum and Dad, I'm going to kill you. Don't go and tell him." So the poor bugger sat there for about 15 minutes downstairs, crying his eyes out. And I said, "It doesn't hurt that much. Don't worry about it. Just sit there." And he went upstairs and he watched about 5 minutes of the cartoons and Mum kept saying to him, "What's wrong with you?" And he said, "Nothing, nothing." And I just looked at him, you know, just kept staring at him and finally he couldn't take it anymore. He just burst into tears and Dad came home and he had a look and he had his collarbone sticking up like that. They removed his shirt and there was just a big V.
Cannon Hill State School in 1966, where a freckle-faced young kid called Wally Lewis turned up with his Vegemite sandwiches and his old leather football.
But then they started school just up here at Cannon Hill State School. It was a flourishing school at that stage. I think there was something like 1,100 children there. Today I think they'd be lucky if they had 300. But certainly rugby league, that was the right school to go to. It was very competitive. We were a sporting family. It was as simple as that. Sport was actually first. In fact, when we went to school, the last thing of the morning was I heard their spellings outside the gate. So I always made sure that I did hear their spellings because I thought if they could read, write and add up, they'd get on all right in life.
His boyhood achievements are told in the family's trophy room, lovingly put together by his mother June. Never a year went by without some form of recognition. In isolation, they're proud achievements, but collectively they represented the flower of genius that would, in years to come, embrace the league fans, thousands of them, in nations.
I had a lot of pride when I first pulled on a Cannon Hill jersey. It was the Cannon Hill Stars, and that was my local team. In those days, it was as good as representing your country because we were sort of an area that was a new area in Brisbane. It was a real working man's suburb. I got the opportunity to play for Cannon Hill, and I went out there. But the thing was, I was playing rugby league. I was finally getting the chance to go out there and play the game that I'd seen so many great players have the opportunity to do so. I got out there and played football for Cannon Hill, and I thought, well, this is it. I've finally done it. I've played rugby league, and that's all I ever wanted to do.
The referee pulled him aside.
After the game, he came over, didn't he?
He pulled him aside and he said, listen, son, you're doing too much. Settle down.
But he was tackling, he was running, and he was kicking. That was his very first game. We remember that well, actually.
I always wanted to impress my dad. He was the only one that I ever cared about playing good in front of because I knew that his criticism was always there to help me. I used to come off the field and run up and say, how'd I go, Dad? I went pretty well, didn't I? What did you think about that performance? And he was never too forward in giving out appraisals. He used to sort of say, yeah, you did okay, you did that well and you did this well, but you missed 3 tackles. See what you can do next week. I don't want to see you miss 3 tackles. And the next time I ran on the field, I used to think, I can't miss 3 tackles. I used to have a real fear about missing 3 tackles. And I'd come home after playing a game where he didn't see me, and I should say, I scored 3 tries today, or I did this and I did that. His only question was, what did you do wrong?
He always said he would never, ever play under me as a coach. And I'd coached Wynnum A grade in '76, and Wally was playing
Valleys.
Playing for Valleys, and the next year, '77, Valleys under-18s didn't have a coach, and he asked me to put in for him, and I got the job. And I think I started off with about 14 players just before the season started, and Wally was playing Union for State High. And this particular night, we were training before our first fixture match, and Wally was the captain, and I said to him, now, I know you've got a team meeting. I said, go to the team meeting. I said, I don't mind if you don't train, but turn up. You've got to get there. So he didn't turn up. Anyway, I said a few words when I got home, but I let it drop there. And then we were playing on the Friday night, I think it was, our first game against the Police. That was Wayne Bennett's side. And anyway, I had 14 players, so I handed out the 14 jumpers, and Wally got his number 8 and everything like that, and everything was all right, till I announced the side to go on the field. And he wasn't in it. Oh, and he performed. And not so much to me, because he knew that wouldn't have done him any good, but most of the officials, he gave me a nice big bake too, and I thought that was lovely. I enjoyed it. I know I've heard him, see.
I didn't really dominate too much as an attacking player when I was a young fellow. I think my dad always impressed upon me most, it was the defensive players that will always get his praise. He was a first-grade footballer himself and an A-grade coach, and I remember he always used to tell his players, they missed so many tackles and they let in so many tries. That's what lost the game for the team. And I never, ever wanted to be the player that lost a game for my team. If I couldn't score a try, well, then fine. Some other players could do it. And I was one of the slowest players in any team that I ever played for as a youngster. I always used to think to myself, I only missed those 2 or 3 tackles, though. And it got harder and harder and harder as I went through junior football to try and cut down the mistakes I made and try and search for that game where you never, ever made a mistake. You didn't miss a tackle. And if you got through one of those games and thought, well, I did that, I didn't make any mistakes in the defensive line, then Dad would turn around and say, but how'd you go and attack? So it was always getting 100% in one area before you'd search for the perfect record in another.
Wally wasn't your regular high school student, and that was evident in his report cards and his many trips to the headmaster's office.
My memories of myself at Brisbane State High were exactly the same, I suppose, as a lot of young kids had. They had a lot of two-bob mug lair in them. I came from a real working man's area. The Cannon Hill, a lot of the guys there were often people that their parents probably struggled to earn $150 a week in those days. And my dad was no... We were a real battling family, but he never you know, gave out excuses. He always used to say, you know, you've got to strive to achieve better. I went to school and I got into trouble with teachers at Brisbane State High from day one. The very first day I was at school, I was in a fight. I got an absolute hiding, but I sort of came home and I thought, yeah, you know, I'm the tough guy at school. I've done well now.
But no, we didn't really have a lot of trouble with Wally, except
No, well, Wally...
I didn't know till later in life. He had a few problems when he went to high school, but they never ever told me until I've only learnt about it the last couple of years. I always thought he was a pretty good lad, but a couple of the stories I've heard since.
Yeah, well, he got in a bit of trouble, like all boys get in a bit of trouble. They're all boys, and of course he come to me and we fixed everything up. There was no need for Mum to know, so...
It was just he had a couple of smokes at school when he shouldn't have.
I can remember one particular incident where the teachers used to... One year in particular where the teachers had a lot of fun in cutting me back to size was my final year in high school. We thought we were pretty good being in the first 11 cricket and the first 15 football, and you could walk around like you were 10 foot tall and bulletproof. And suddenly the teachers used to have fun and saying, hey, listen, come here, you think you're this and that, and chop you right back down to size. And in particular, the principal, on my last day at high school, sort of said to me, well, congratulations on your success. I was going away with the Australian Schoolboys Rugby Union team. Good luck on the tour. I haven't really enjoyed being associated with you here at school, and see you later. And he kind of swept me out of the office, get out of the way type of thing. And the same bloke, about 3 years later, I came across him at the Brisbane Cricket Ground, and I had just been selected in the Queensland Rugby League team. And he came up to me and said, oh, look, it's great to see you, one of my former students. Come here, I'd like to introduce you to a lot of my old mates. And I looked at you and I said, you're kidding. I wouldn't be seen dead with you. And I just walked away from him. And I think that was a little bit of getting back from the times that I didn't enjoy. I never ever told my mum, but I used to be forced to go up to the office every Monday morning to get 2 cuts in my final year, 2 strokes with a cane in my final year at school, just to keep me in tow, just to let me know that I was being looked at and made sure that I was towing the line.
The year is 1977. It's the Australian Rugby Football Schools Union side, known as the Invincibles, sweeping all before them on a world tour. 11 went on to represent their country at senior level, and Wally Lewis, arguably their brightest star. There was Michael O'Connor, Michael Hawker, Tony Melrose, of course, the great Mark Ella, and his brilliant brothers Glenn and Gary.
I think my first opportunity that I really had to appreciate what rugby union offered me and what playing for Australia gave to me was when I went away with the Australian Schoolboys Rugby Union team in 1977. I had the opportunity to play with some magnificent footballers on that tour. The Ella brothers were 3 of the blokes on tour that probably received the most publicity. Michael O'Connor was a player, Michael Hawker, Chris Roach, Tony Darcy. The list is endless of the players that were successful on that tour. But it gave me the opportunity to go away with a group of very talented footballers and exchange ideas, see how the other players used to handle certain events on a football field. And that, to me, probably was worth 5 or 10 years' experience. I used to watch and marvel at the abilities of the Ella brothers, and a lot of people used to argue who was the more talented in those days, was it Mark or Glenn? And I had a very good relationship with Gary Ella, who I played in the centres alongside, and I often thought that Gary, if they had a change to league, the 3 of them, Gary probably would have been the most successful league player. He was a fellow that really fitted in along the rugby league guidelines. Mark and Glenn, though, were just 2 absolute freaks. They were magicians with the football, but fellows that could adapt to any sport. We went away on the tour, and for 3 months we had 27, 28 schoolboys stuck together, and that could get fairly boring. And in one RAF base in the south of Wales, we were stuck together, and it was cold and wet, and it was Christmas going on New Year time. We missed our families and girlfriends. We wanted to go home, but we just got stuck in an RAF base, and there probably weren't many worse places to be, but the fellows stuck together, and we all bought table tennis tables and snooker tables just to bide time with. And that was probably the time when I realised how freakish the Ella brothers were. They'd never played table tennis before. Within 3 days, they were thrashing everybody that had ever played table tennis before. And I used to play a lot. We had a table at our house, and 5 or 6 years' experience. was no match for Mark or Glenn Ella. They absolutely whipped a lot of us. They were whipping guys in snooker, anything we decided to play, cricket, whatever it was. And that gave me a chance to appreciate the talents and ball skills that these guys had. And I still now look back and regard Mark Ella as probably the most gifted footballer and probably the most gifted ball sports player that I've ever seen.
But it was in league and not union where his destiny would lie, and a pro career of unparalleled success and controversy.
You talk about Bradman, and you talk about Walter Lindrum, and you talk about Dawn Fraser. I think you can talk about Wally Lewis. You talk about Kingston Town. I remember the famous call at the turn in the third WS Cox Plate, the weight for age championship of the world, and they said Kingston Town's gone, and Kingston Town won his third Cox Plate. They said Lewis was gone, and he kept on giving. So he's amongst, really, I think, the immortals. That's not overstating it. And when people have that kind of ability, you've got to expect they're going to bob up somewhere else. You don't just sign them off. I mean, people talk about Wally Lewis's skills as if they were just technical skills. I mean, obviously, he throws it past beautifully. He knows when to kick. I mean, that skill is judgment. So he's not just got the natural ability, because a lot of players have got that. There are heaps of players most probably kick better than Wally Lewis, perhaps pass to the right better than Wally Lewis, not perhaps to the left. They certainly run faster than Wally Lewis. They're stronger. They mostly probably tackle and hurt more than Wally Lewis. But it's what he does with them. He seems to be using the appropriate skill more often at the right time than any other contemporary player.
There's Lewis. That's the first approach to the tackle. In comes Ellery Hanley, and they've all giving him plenty. Yes, well, yes, still going, and Wally keeps going. And we'll see. That's a try. Yep. That's a fair.
Well, the one thing he has got, he's a winner, and he's a player that just goes out and... I mean, I saw him play a game in 1988, the third test against Great Britain at the Sydney Football Stadium, and the players were falling down as far as their form goes all around him, and I thought that was one of the best games I've seen the man play, and it was in a losing side, and he really pushed it to the hilt. And as I said, there was a lot of other big-name players that just didn't give him the support that he should have got in that particular game, because if they all played the way Wally did, and that was the best to the best of his ability, well, they would have won that particular test.
There's a little chip kick by Lewis. He's regathered. He's got Strudwick inside. He's still going as Lewis puts in a little grubber kick. He's out after it. He could be the first one there. I reckon he'll win the race. No, Newer does, and it's a try.
The first game that we had that year was against Valleys, and it was a big shock to me because I'd coached the top side over in Auckland, and we'd been used to winning. And North had run last the year before, and we'd lost a lot of players, and it was only a new young side. But that's when I saw Wally. And from memory, I think they beat us by over 30 points. Might have been 35 points or something they beat us by. But Wally Lewis, he was just, like, I couldn't believe it, just watching him play. At that stage, he was playing lock, but he was just a sensational player. And he just, you know, he was magic back in those times. And I thought he was, I thought he was the very best. But as years went by, he showed he was even going to be better.
Lewis away over the quarter line. He's coming up the fullback. Belcher takes a tackle but gets through it and is over.
Valley's looking for the try to seal it up. Wally Lewis, desperation stakes, but away it goes, and there's a try for Carrocken.
To McWhirter to Lewis. Lewis put in a little kick, regathered, still going. Kellaway's at him. He got away from Kellaway. Sends it back to McWhirter, and he'll race away, and he's over underneath the post.
On most occasions.
Back it goes to Lewis, bustling up the centre. He's coming up to Kilroy's away from Kilroy, and he'll score. Lewis is in.
When he came into grade football in '78 with Valleys, he quickly stamped that mark of class on his football. But he also was a player who was a little bit different. I think he was a little bit aloof as a person, I recall at quite a few end-of-season functions, best player awards, that sort of thing. Wally never quite was one of the lads. He stood in a corner often with a small circle of friends, and I don't think it was a deliberate thing, but I think like many class sportsmen, he was perhaps a little single-minded and wanted to run his own race.
When he first came into it, well, you know, he ran it a lot because him and Struddy, you know, created havoc for Valleys in the early days, especially Wally with his chip kick and regather and setting up play. But as he got older, he started using his head a lot more, and to the rest of us in the team, you know, it didn't really matter that much because he was always 1, 2, 3 steps ahead of everyone. And to me, you know, that's what made him the great player he is. He was just so far ahead of everyone else.
I thought playing first-grade football to me was just about the end of the road. That's all I ever wanted to do. I think a lot of guys around about that age then too, when we were 18, just coming into grade football, thought that you had to be some sort of superhuman to play for your country or even your state. And when I played first-grade football, I thought, well, that's it. You know, I've arrived here. If I get to play first-grade football for the rest of my life, that'll do me. I was very lucky. I had quite a, I suppose, lucky opening to a first-grade career. I was playing in a side that was just about to become one of the real strengths in the Brisbane competition. It was captained by Ross Strudwick, who certainly helped me a lot, and all I did in my first A-grade game was do what I was told. He told me where to run, and I scored 3 tries in that game.
Lewis away over the quarter line. He's coming up the full-back Belcher. Takes the tackle, but gets through. He's over.
Ended up winning or being in the grand final team that's well and truly won. Boy, oh boy, what a score.
1 minute walking about there. Malmanegra in the background, the South players absolutely stunned. The one thing they'd love to do would be away from there, but give them the due, Mick, they've stayed there. That's the grand final for 1984. Disappointing from a crowd spectacle, although if you're a Wynnum supporter, it was beautiful. So the full-time score, we see Wynnum Manly defeating South by 42 points to 8. There's Wally.
I'd be telling a lie if I said Lang Park wasn't my favourite ground. It's a ground that I've enjoyed playing on ever since my first time. I played there in 1967 as a 4-stone schoolboy. In the grand final there. We were victorious on that occasion, and it was one of those grounds where I thought, well, I want to be part of this for a long, long time. That's where all the Brisbane football was played. If a team was any good, they always played at Lang Park. The match of the day was always there. And I suppose by the time I got to play for Queensland the very first time, I'd probably had 40 or 50 matches on Lang Park. Now, 10 years, 12 years later, I've had the opportunity to play in Lang Park probably 200 times, and some commentators are a little bit funny when they say Lewis knows every blade of grass on Lang Park. Well, that may sound funny, I suppose, at times, but in reality, it's pretty much true. When you get out in Lang Park, you see that it's very much a curved field. It curves to the sidelines, and if you kick a ball towards the edge of the field, it's naturally going to run downhill. And a lot of people say, hey, Lewis knows that corner of the field that runs down. It's only common sense. If you kick the football there, it's naturally going to run down the field and go out. But some of the moments I've enjoyed of the field are amongst the greatest of my life, and it's a place that will always hold a very special place in my football memories.
Beats it on the blind, back inside to Lewis, turns it away to Oliphant, they're moving nicely, Smith, Meninga, close, gets it away to Boosted, this could be the try they're after, yes it is, he's over, running around and Boosted is in. Wales Port alone, you can see. This is Johnny Lang. Beatson up the centre. Back to Lang. Sends it away to Meninga. Meninga to Close. Close cutting back the other way. Catches the fence on the wrong foot. He's broken through. He's coming up to Eadie. Gets away from Eadie. He's over underneath. Chris Close. Great piece of work.
The memories I have of my first State of Origin game at Lang Park are many. Probably the best one I've got is actually being grabbed by Arthur Beetson before we went out onto the ground, and Arthur pulled me aside into a corner and he could see the nerves from a mile away. I was standing alongside some of the greatest players in history and playing against some of the best. And Beetson dragged me into the corner and he said, "Listen, mate, you've got a little bit of talent." He said, "I've spoken to the players up here and they tell me you can play. Just go out there and do your best. Whatever you do, just try your best." So I walked out onto the football field, very nervous, of course, and was introduced to the crowd one by one, and then the noise came when Arthur Beetson was introduced to the crowd. And Queensland's had many victories since that day at Lang Park, but I still don't think I've ever heard such a noise come out of the outer of Lang Park. It was absolutely deafening. Queensland's favourite son of all time was finally home to represent his state.
Tackler won the Queensland Vic. Oh, gee, there's a big one by Wynn. Beetson came at him.
Actually, it was Greg Oliphant that put the first one in, and a niggly little one, and it's in.
It's on for young and old now, breaking up in various directions.
Chris Close put Alan Thompson down.
And there's players going in all directions. Still, it's Morris. And
look at that.
Going on. They're still going. Oliphant moving in at Rogers. They're coming in everywhere. And still this huge melee of players.
Tell you what, Oliphant...
My motivation was centred around the fact that virtually New South Welshmen, or the cockroaches as Barry Muir likes to refer them as, were the silver tails, and we were the fibro dwellers, so we were the underdogs, and we really needed no motivation.
Then away to Beetson. Works it on to Lewis. Lewis dummies, trying to find a way up the centre, but tagged over there by Rogers. Lewis over there from one side. Beetson's into it too, and him back a couple of metres. Queensland have defeated New South Wales by 20
I don't think I played a very good game at all that night. I think I was absolutely starstruck. I ran alongside Arthur probably 3/4 of the game. Didn't manage to get very, very many opportunities. But after the game, I suppose I could console myself in the fact that Queensland had won and I'd finally had the opportunity to play alongside one of the greatest players of all time.
Could have been wrestled out of his hands by Lewis. We'll wait for Thompson. Yes, a Queensland ball.
You could see then that he was a budding champion, and same next year when I was captain coach of Queensland. I also had the pleasure of playing against Wally in club football in Brisbane, and there was no doubt he was destined for the stars.
Here's Lewis, he's on the go. Beautiful stuff, Wally Lewis inside to Mark Murray. He's going for that line. Hunt is at him, but Hunt will pull him down. And go.
Lewis is not agreeing with what has happened. He's saying Konechki's had the ball. He's had the ball, says Wally. He's had the ball, says Wally. Grubber. Lewis. McIndoe. McIndoe's got the speed. He should have the speed. Jack, that's gone forward. Will he test his strength? He does. If there's a try, Bacco, he's in. Lewis has created it again.
Watch this. He's in trouble. 1, 2, 3. 3 defenders, and he pulls them all in.
Now it's with Lewis on his...
Well, the State of Origin fixtures are amongst the greatest forums for competitive sport that the world of sport has ever seen. I mean, OK, you have your Super Bowl and all that stuff, which I'm not enamoured of. They're all padded up and only a couple of people are involved in the play, and it is America and there's plenty of hype. But, I mean, this is genuinely tough stuff. And the thing that is the central attractive point about it is that it's unstructured. It's a spontaneous playing of the sport by people who most probably for the rest of the year are highly structured with coaches. What they can't do, not what they can do. Now, you haven't got time to do this. They're picked from different clubs. There's 13 of them, 15 of them. A coach has a couple of days to most probably establish a couple of strategies, whether we're going to play it down there or up there, and whether we ruck it early or whether we kick it. But beyond that, it's saying, well, listen, fellas, you're not here if you haven't got ability. Away you go. I don't know, perhaps Lewis has a particular place and all that, because we're talking about a decade of them and he's been in the lot.
New South Wales have it. Last tackle coming up. We'll probably see the bomb again. Mortimer, up it goes. Up above the pack they fly, that's a try. New South Wales looking dangerous. They're back up to the quarterway. Ben Elias goes from dummy half. He's through. He splits them all. What a great try. Benny Elias goes in to score under the post. Was Pat Jarvis, as John Rebo has to do some running repairs in back play, having lost his shoe as it comes to Chris Close. Close trying to get past Ferguson, got it to Shearer, then it goes away to Murray. Murray gets it away to Bobby Lindner. Lindner will go in and score. That's a great try. Queensland are back in business. Greg Canescu, a one-handed pass back to Lewis. This time Lewis elects to run, and he does. Into the open goes Wally Lewis. He's looking for support. He's got Rebo outside of him. He's still running. He's brought down just 1 metre out. Back to Lewis. Away to Meninga. Can Meninga unload? Back to Lewis. Across to Dave Brown. Brown up the centre. Can't get his pass back. 8 metres out. Canescu. On to Dowling. Dowling decides to run. Trying to get past Cleal. Back inside it goes to Ian French. Is he over? He is. He's there. Back it goes for the field goal attempt by Michael O'Connor. It's there. New South Wales is back in front. Mortimer gets his pass away to Brett Kenny. Kenny sneaking through. He's over. He's put it down. That's it. That's the ball game.
The tough thing about Wally Lewis was when you came up against him. He was the player in 99% of this, well, out of the 18 State of Origin matches I played, 17 of those State of Origin matches, he was the man whom we had to stop. The other State of Origin, he was out injured. So he was the man that really ignited the State of Origin for Queensland. He was the guy that set them on fire.
Here's to Wally Lewis for lacing on a boot. Sometimes he plays it rugged, sometimes he plays it cute. There's blue on all his fingers. He's the emperor of Lang Park.
It is like the Colosseum. You know, it's like the gladiators out in the middle of the field with, you know, with the spectators just burning for action. And that's the way it feels out there.
And when the Blues come up here to try and make a show, they go back scratching their heads saying, which way did he go?
I can remember leaving the Park Royal Hotel on a bus, heading to the ground. We had a police escort because the traffic was phenomenal. Going towards the ground, we went past a pub on a hill. I think it's called the Caxton, at the back of Lang Park there, and it was bumper-to-bumper traffic, and we've just pulled up outside the hotel, and the pub was full. There were people spewing out onto the footpaths, and one of the guys drinking on the footpath recognised New South Wales in the bus. So they proceeded to scull their drinks and throw their cans at the bus. I mean, this is my very first State of Origin, heading to Lang Park. The game hadn't even started.
The next time he goes over there to educate the pom, perhaps he'll teach a few to sing. I can feel the forex coming on. I can feel the forex coming on.
I know the old cliche of they grow 10 feet when they put the maroon jersey on out at Lang Park, but it just seems to be, I mean, they just seem to be unaffected by anything. You know, you can throw Sheridan and Roach at them at 100 miles. They'll stand there. Langer will get out and throw his whole body on the line for them. And that's the way it is out there. And whether it be the euphoria or of just the build-up of Lang Park, I don't know. But this is just, you know, I think the records would speak for themselves, wins and losses at Lang Park for the Queenslanders.
We're gonna play the blues tonight. We're gonna play the blues tonight. We're gonna slay the blues tonight. Blow away the blues tonight. Can you feel it? Gonna play tough. Gonna play strong. Can't you feel the big wind coming on? Can you feel
it? It is unbelievable. I mean, if you said kill, it's you know, I mean, that's overdoing it. But I mean, for each other, that's really what, it's not for themselves, it's for each other. I mean, whatever they get out of it is a bonus, it's a plus. I mean, Australian, everybody wants to play for Australia, everybody wants to be in an Australian side. But all these players, all these Queenslanders, they just want to beat New South Wales.
Blow away the blues tonight. Can you feel it? Gonna play tough. Gonna play strong. Feel it. I got the taste for it. Can you feel it? And I just can't wait. We're gonna play the blues tonight. Can you feel it? We're gonna play the blues tonight. We're gonna play the blues tonight. Can you feel it? Blow away the blues tonight. a big win coming on? Can you feel it? I can feel a big win coming on.
Well, I get into trouble here because having lived in New South Wales for a long time, but I am a Queenslander and I was born on the Darling Downs. Now, you're asking me what you get out of it. What you get out of it is the fact that you become a Queenslander straight away. Isn't it a terrible thing to say? But in the sense, because you're living and working down here, not terrible to be a Queenslander, but you're actually living with people. And last year, as coach of Balmain, I mean, Benny, one of my players, was the captain, and I desperately wanted him to do well and the team to do well, but I really was a Queenslander with this enormous maroon heart pulsating and beating. So that's what it does to you, doesn't it? I mean, it makes you stop. You cancel programs. You sit there at night. You talk about it the day before. You talk about it the day after. It's bigger than the Melbourne Cup.
When the guys first joined together in the hotel camp, they really bond as one team unit. It's a family-type atmosphere. Everybody wants to play for Queensland. It's not so much play for themselves, play for their state, and play for their own honour. It's play for Queensland. And I think a lot of the success for Queensland is owed to games played 15 and 20 years ago where Queensland were belted year in and year out and were embarrassed by New South Wales. So we had the chance to get out there and know that we could beat New South Wales. And Fatty Vaughton used to epitomise it more than any other player when they were playing for Queensland. When we were doing it tough, players would look to each other and say, hey, the hell, there's still 10 minutes to go here. We've got no petrol left in the tank. What are we going to do? New South Wales are starting to run over the top of us. You turn and look to the rest of the teammates alongside you and say, come on, guys, we've got to bond together. And Fatty had always come up with the cry, Queenslander. It's great to be a Queenslander. And suddenly, out of all the tired-looking faces, a little bit of energy would spring. And guys would get a little bit more excited and say, Queenslander, Queenslander. It would become infectious. And one would go on to another, and suddenly you had 13 players screaming Queenslander with Gary Belcher at the back, and he was just like the conductor of the orchestra, just screaming it out time after time after time. And this would go on for probably 8 or 10 minutes. And when guys really stuck together that closely, that shows you just how much team spirit can lift a team's performance. The try I managed to score in that particular game holds a very special moment in my life for me. It was something that I felt pretty good about, and I certainly celebrated after the try in no uncertain terms. But to me, that try was brought about by an example of discipline and guts and courage by another bloke that received very, very little credit for his involvement in that try. Now, at that stage, New South Wales had the ball. They brought a ruck out from their own line. They were probably about 20, 22 metres out from their line, and Trevor Gilmeister ran in at about 120 kilometres an hour and hit one of the New South Wales forwards with one of the hardest tackles I've ever experienced in State of Origin football. The ball came loose. Michael Hagan picked it up and just shot it out to me. Under those sort of circumstances, that's the best idea. If there's nothing on in that particular area of the field where you're standing, get the ball out a little bit wider. Perhaps there's an opportunity out there. The ball came my way. To be very honest, I don't know why I decided to run and take that angle. Maybe there was a little bit of a gap there. Thinking back on it, I can notice that I've had a look up and spied a little bit of a hole, and I decided to run. In times like that, though, it's just up to your own determination and your own judgment whether you're going to make it, and I decided that I was going to have a go. I got into the clear, and there was one guy to beat, which was Gary Jack, and Gary, of course, is one of the finest fullbacks Australia's ever produced. He had the disadvantage, though, of playing after his arm was broken a few months earlier. I decided that he was the guy I was going to take on because I knew just how much inconvenience a broken arm can cause.
It is warfare now between New South Wales and Queensland, and it's all about state supremacy. And Queensland, for the part we've played the last decade, we've been the dominating team, and we want to keep it that way. And we want to make sure that every time we go on the football field against the New South Wales team, that we're going to play to our potential. And if we do that, and particularly with the Lang Park crowd behind us, we're more than likely going to win that game.
And the Blues on. It's all on now. And
Queensland skipper Wally Lewis was sent to the sin bin by referee Mick Stone for inciting the brawl. The Emperor's fans were infuriated and let loose with a shower of beer cans, most empty, some full. Police were powerless to stop the bombardment.
I can distinctly remember Mark McGaw, who was playing in one of his earlier State of Origin matches, came over to me and he said, Junior, because I was captain, he said, "Are we going to stay on here?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "The cricketers walked off." He said, "Are we staying on here?" He was really, really shaking. But now we settled down and finished the match.
It is almost as though Wally Lewis was born to be part of this concept that is the State of Origin competition. Wally came along, or Wally hit his straps, as it were, virtually when at the outset of the team competition, and it wasn't just the fact that Wally had the ability. Wally also had the personality. He also had the presence. But probably more importantly, at that young age, and none of us knew how good Wally Lewis was going to be either, Wally had this tremendous loyalty to Queensland that was really, and this loyalty was generated, and the spirit towards the team was a spin-off of this.
Actually, it was a hot day, very hot day. It was about 34 degrees. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't nervous at all the whole day. It went very quickly. There was a lot of media there as well, but we had lots and lots of friends. We had 200 in the guests, so there was a lot of people to get round to. It was nice when we actually got back to the Sheraton where we stayed, and then we happened to have to watch the Union that night because the Union test was on. So we happened to watch Mark. We had to watch Mark and Ella on TV, and because Mark couldn't make it to our wedding, and him and his brothers had sent a telegram to say that they couldn't. No, it was a wonderful day. There's been 4 lovely occasions in my life, my wedding and my 3 children.
My own family's been a tower of strength to me. There's been a lot of trying times over the last couple of years, but in particular the last 6 to 12 months really have been very testing. My daughter was pronounced profoundly deaf. That in itself's not such a great problem to us. She's a terrific little kid and displays a lot of bravery herself, and is a ball of fun to be around. My 2 sons are great little kids. They get to spend a fair bit of time with me during the off-season. They just can't understand, why I've got to spend so much time associated with football. But when I do get to spend time with them, it's quality time. We do everything that they want to do, and I like to give them the best of what I possibly can. And in saying that, I probably want to give them the same opportunities that my parents gave me.
We first thought that there was a problem, and then I went to the doctor. This was about 4 days before she turned 1, and he then started to believe me. I mean, I'd been to many doctors, but by this stage, they did start to believe me, even though, as my paediatrician said, she was so quick with her eye movement, like any movement, she'd just spin around to it, that it was really hard to detect that she had a hearing problem. They thought it was just a small hearing problem, so they said to me, OK, we'll put it straight in and we'll give her grommets and that will fix it. And I said, well, I don't think she hears anything. But they said, well, that's all right. That's how some children react. I said, oh, OK, well, that's fine, I mean, she had went and said, Dad, Dad, on us and everything. I know now that she was lip reading and it was just noise coming out of her mouth. She's had to put up with all of the disappointments. She was there to share the disappointments with Jamie Lee's deafness, but she's been alone a lot of the times when a lot of the criticism has been levelled at me by different parties around the country and on other sides of the Tasman. She, a lot of the time, has been there by herself. I mean, to me, a lot of that stuff is water off a duck's back, and it really doesn't upset me whatsoever. But quite often I'll ring Jack and she'll be in tears on the phone, and
She doesn't handle it quite as well as I do, but a lot of the time when I've had to share moments of disappointment, she's made them a lot easier to bear.
Yeah, actually, well, there was one incident up at Cannon Hill, and we used to always go back and do our shopping at Cannon Hill, even though we started to move down to Birkdale and the Cleveland area. We'd still go back and do our shopping at Cannon Hill because that was where Wally's shop used to be, and that's where we knew everybody. And I always walk usually up a different aisle than Wally because he's a bit slow when we go shopping. He loves grocery shopping. So, and you always hear these people, there goes Wally Lewis, there goes Wally Lewis. Anyway, I heard one of the young girls say something like, oh, you know, Wally's a wanker. And she was a shop assistant, and she walked back into the fruit and veg. So I followed her. And I wasn't going to have that. If I need to hear that, I can go to Sydney. You know, I don't need to hear it in my own about someone she didn't know. She didn't know that at all. And I explained that to her, and I don't think she'll say it again.
The names have always flowed pretty thick and fast in Sydney. There have never been too many complimentary ones, that's for sure. I ran out and, you know, there's always been the banners, Wally sucks and Wally's a wanker, and in a way that used to make me feel pretty good. I knew that I had the people against me, and whenever I went to Sydney, I knew that I was going to be at my best in an interstate clash because I automatically, as soon as I got to the ground, I knew that I was going to be switched on to play football. I'd walk into the ground and people would scream abuse at me, and that would always ensure that I was in the right frame of mind. The only time that it ever really got to me, I mean, the chant used to go on, Wally's a wanker from one end of the ground, and the other end of the field would be chanting, Wally sucks, and Paul Vaughton would be out next to me on the football field, and he'd be sort of using some gestures with his hand that would make me have a bit of a giggle. But the only time that it used to annoy me, really annoy me, was when the national anthem came on. I used to take a great deal of pride, and still do, in singing the national anthem, whether it's before a club game or an interstate or international game. I believe that when the national anthem is on, then everything else stops and you sing your national anthem if you've got a bit of pride in your country. But it seemed, down there anyway, that they had more people interested in singing the Sydney national anthem, which was Wally's a wanker or Wally sucks.
The Australian Rugby League team to play against the touring French side has been announced in Sydney and includes the dynamic Queenslander Wally Lewis. Also in the squad...
These Australians certainly don't run in ones. There's people backing up of them all the time. Oh, good long ball. And he's in. Mal Meninga. Another 40-yard pass. Well, they're toying with us now.
The most special moments in my life, the ones I like to remember most, are the times that I represented my country, the first time being probably the most special, and the time when I first heard I was going to be captain of Australia. I can remember I was sitting at home with my wife after I was announced as captain of my country. And my wife remembers it better than I do, but she often reminds me that she came in and I was looking at a map of Australia. It was in a magazine or a paper or something. And I turned around to her and I said, I'm captain of the greatest country in the world. How good does that make me feel?
Lewis, Miles, his teammate from Queensland, Lindner. Lindner for Lewis. Lewis for the line. That's a Queensland backup. The referee's over. Has he awarded the try? It's a try to Wally Lewis.
You hear different stories before you take over. I know I was apprehensive when I first took over the job, and I made a few inquiries, but when I got with Wally and I had Peter Sterling as a vice-captain on the Kangaroos too, but all the test matches, Wally Lewis is just a true professional, and he just loves to win, and when you have that sort of a captain under your wing, you can't help be successful. I can't speak more highly than Wally Lewis. I know at times he might have trod on his own foot a few times, and he's probably wished he hadn't have done a few things, but you're talking to me as a captain, as a footballer, and as a man as far as relationship between coach and player. And I just couldn't put a better adjective to say he was magnificent.
First sign of the true taste of typical North England weather as the morning training session gets underway.
Stand by for the national anthem of Australia.
bunched there, not giving themselves any depth. They need to stand a lot deeper. Out to Sterling. Sterling away there with a cutout pass to Lewis. Pops a pass back inside to Miles. Miles looking for support. Gets it away to O'Connor, and he's in for the try. Out they go, the Australians. Out to Lewis. Lewis steps, weaves. Busts the tackle. Gets a pass away to Miles. And Miles is in beside the post. And Wally Lewis has created a magnificent try for Gene Miles, who's gone over and scored right beside the post. Simmons a dummy half. On to Sterling. Sterling gets a pass to Lewis. Lewis is on the surge, and he's over! Right underneath the black dot. That's the place to score him. Get their hand.
We are the boys you know of. Russia. We show them how to play. No matter where we'll be. The green and gold.
When I first took over, I said, how come you fell out in 1982 with Frank Stanton? He said, I didn't like the way he trained. He said he didn't like the way I trained. And I said, well, I don't either. But I judge you on how you play. And I said, as far as I'm concerned, if you do the work at training and you play well, I can't ask for more than that. And he said, that's fair enough. And I never had any trouble. Another time I thought he was just putting on a little weight. I said, how about doing a bit extra? And he said, yes. And then he used to run home from training for the next week in England. So he was, as I said, he was just so professional. And when he... I think the motivation is he just likes to be successful, and that's personally and also with the teams he's associated with. He, he's just one of those fellas, and if he didn't think I was saying enough to the players, he'd chip in and give them a bit of a boost along himself. So he was just, as I said, great for me as being a coach with a fella like that.
The 1982 tour for me was a very proud moment for me. I was named as vice-captain of the touring side. When we got over there, though, it was also the source of a little bit of disappointment. I wasn't included in the first test lineup. I was hauled aside by the coach, Frank Stanton, who was very disappointed, he said, in my form so far. He said that I'd obviously spoken to somebody who'd been on a previous tour that had told me, don't let a good tour interfere with a good time. I think we'd been away for around about 20 days and I'd put on 1 stone and 3 pounds in that stage, or around about 6 or 7 kilos in the new terms. So I'd been doing training pretty tough, put it that way. I had to turn around and work very hard at trying to get back in the side. It was some good performances, and I say that without reservation actually, because I tried very, very hard to get that spot back. I was quite pleased with the way I'd managed to play in some of the games over there, and the conditions weren't really helping a lot of the Australians who were struggling to get in the test lineup. I managed to get back in there, but it certainly took a lot of trying. Now, a lot of Queensland people said Stanton's the coach, and Sterling and Ray Price are in the side. That's the end for Lewis. He's finished. You won't see him in the test lineup. So they thought interstate jealousy was the reason that I wasn't in the first test lineup. But I can tell you in all honesty, the only reason why I did the first test lineup was because of the superior form shown by Brett Kenny. Often sitting on the bench in a football game allows you the opportunity to see some opportunities that few players get the chance to see. I came onto the field through an injury to Eric Groth. I got on there and went to halfback, and a few players in the back line shuffled around in their positions, and it was strange to see Mel Meninga shifted out onto the wing. Neither of us really said too much. He looked at me and I looked at him, and he just sort of raised his finger in the air as if I want the ball, and the pass happened. It floated, it went through the air, and fortunately it hit the mark on Big Mel's chest, and he went across to score.
The ball left behind by McCabe. The referee allowing play on as Lewis has come away. Was a knock on, but Kenny will go on with this. Kenny's beaten 1, 2, and he's in for a try. But he one-handed to Wayne Pearce. Pearce goes through, right through the middle. Looks for support. Scott Reddy there. Should be a try to Revo. Revo goes, and he's in. Ray Young sprinting away. Wayne Pearce will score a try. And look at him go. The referee might tackle him, but that's the only one. Weaves nicely up to the corner. Beautiful pass to Rogers. Rogers away to Kenny. Kenny gets a pass away to Bosted. Bosted on the run around to Pearce. Pearce will score. Gets it back inside to Lloyd. And Lloyd's Out to Kenny. Rogers leaves it behind. Back to Kenny. Now then to the fullback. Oh, Reddy comes in for a try.
To me, the biggest difference between the Australian and Great Britain sides since the mid-70s to the mid-80s was the fitness level achieved by both teams. Now, when we went there in 1982, our team were very, very strictly disciplined in the fitness area by Frank Stanton. We trained twice a day at least for 2 hours each session, and 3/4 of that would have been involving fitness work. The Great Britain side, when we played them in that first test, it became apparent even before the kick-off that the two fitness levels between the teams were vastly different. They had 3 players that were well over 30 years of age. One fellow was closer than he was 30. Our guys were all, or mostly, young, very, very fit guys and very trim. Now, a lot of the English fellows were, as some of the Australian players tagged them, early Santa Clauses.
There's Roy Simmons running round behind the defence, got it to Wally Lewis. Wally throws a dummy, another dummy, and Lewis has gone under the post. An incredible solo try from Wally Lewis. They well has gained Australia just that little bit of a breathing space here that'll hold them away from this Great Britain side.
In that second half, it had become apparent that the English believed that they really could win that match after being beaten or flogged in one of the games and beaten quite convincingly in another. They really wanted to win that game to salvage some pride for their country.
Schofield goes one, Schofield over the top, and he's going to score a try. There, good try to Gary Schofield. Down Burton, went out for Stevenson, back inside to Schofield. Good try, that was a great try.
What I had to do more than anything else was try and lift the spirits of our players. Our guys were thinking about going home. The series was finished. We'd won it anyway. After the first 2 test matches, why was this match so important? So I turned around and I grabbed Gene Miles and Brett Kenny and Greg Dowling, and I said, look, a few of the guys here have just lost a little bit of interest. We're going to have to try and revitalise them. Let's start taking some rucks up. Let's get us going forward again. All we're doing is going backwards. The things that you do with the football that you don't really know you're doing, I threw about 3 or 4 dummies, and apparently the winger must have been a little bit fooled by this. And I decided to step inside. I saw the cover come across the last line of cover and stepped inside him and took off as quick as I could. I knew that I was going to get over the try line at that stage, and I just heard one of the English players dive to the ground behind me screaming out, "No, no, no."
Every now and then we have a win, have a win. Come, Dad.
1987 and the formation of the Brisbane Broncos. A bittersweet time for King Wally. He's at last in the Sydney...
...get playing the greatest rugby league comp in the world. And I think a lot of the guys that were playing in the Broncos team at that stage felt exactly the same way. We were able to stay at home, yet we had players of the calibre of Gene Miles and Greg Dowling in the team, players that were of good a quality as any other player in the competition throughout the world.
In for a great try. What a pass. That's sensational.
I loved the opportunity of getting involved. The first match was a dream start for the Broncos, but that quickly, of course, turned to a little bit of dismay. As the season went on, we found that it wasn't quite as easy as the start of the season was. We were starting to find out exactly why people spoke about for years and years just what a difficult competition the Sydney Premiership is to win, because it's not 1, 2 or 5 or 10 weeks long. It's an entire season, almost 9 months' work that you've got to be available and at your best form.
They laid the foundations of what will go down as an historic triumph, with 3 tries in the first 23 minutes of the game. The backline showing the combination and skill that has taken Queensland and Broncos teams to so many memorable wins. And the forwards, with Backo and Dowling inspirational, were like steamrollers early.
Tremendous performance by the Illawarra Steelers. It's been an absolutely magnificent cup final.
1989 Panasonic Cup champions, the Brisbane Broncos.
Winners can smile, says Wally Lewis.
A lot of people have suggested that Wayne Bennett was a little bit worried because I was getting all the credit at the Broncos and that he wasn't. I don't really accept that. There was obviously a lot of the credit going to me. It shouldn't have been. It should have been spread around the club and also the coach as well. I don't think that was a decision made because of my common appearances in newspapers and television programs. It's something that I think has just followed a trend that's been going on for the past 12 years. It's something, it seems to follow each code. There's one player that continually seems to get a few raps, even when he doesn't deserve them, and that was me. I was summoned to a meeting with Wayne Bennett in late 1989. I went over to the Broncos clubhouse, and I didn't think anything too much of it, actually, because it was quite a regular occurrence to be called into Wayne's office to have a meeting. He used to tell you about what he thought about your form, how you were training, all that sort of thing. I went in to see him, and he said, I want to talk about next year. And I said, fine. I thought he was going to tell me about the players we should approach or what was going to be happening. And he said, I'm taking the captaincy away from you. And anybody that knows Wayne Bennett would realise straight away that he doesn't joke. He's a fellow that when he's talking common sense, he looks you directly in the eye, he doesn't muck about, and just gets what he has to say off his chest. And I had that gut feeling that everyone gets in their life when they don't want to hear something. And I looked at him and I had a bit of an embarrassed smile, if anything, across my face, and I said, are you fair dinkum? And he said, yes, I am. I'm taking the captaincy. And there was an eerie silence for 10 or 15 seconds, and I just kept looking at him and trying to convince myself that maybe it was a dream or something. And then I looked at him and he said, do you want to know why? And I said, yeah, I do. And he said, well, there's a couple of reasons. And he went on to explain how he needed all of his representative players to be available as often as possible, but realised that while the rep players were away, that someone else had to captain the side. Now, that was the start of a little bit of disappointment for me, because Gene Miles and myself had probably been the closest to footballers at that stage. He was my best friend, had been for many, many years. And Gene was appointed eventually as the Broncos captain. Now, Gene and I had spoken about our representative careers quite regularly. He came up to see me about it, and he just said, what do you think about me and the Broncos captaincy? And I looked at him and I was embarrassed and scratching myself and said, well, what do you mean? And he said, well, would you be upset at all if I accepted the Broncos captaincy? And I said, you can't. Wayne told me in our meeting that he wasn't going to consider any player that was a representative footballer for the Broncos captaincy. He said it just wasn't in his plans at all. And Gene said, oh, look, I've been thinking about it, and I don't really want to play rep footy anymore. We both took a step in probably the wrong direction. I've got to admit it, I was pretty angry at Gene to start with. I didn't think that he'd accept it. I put myself in the same position, and I thought, well, maybe if he was captain and that I was offered it, I'd sort of say, hey, no, look, you know, I think that the Gene should still be captain. Maybe I think you've made the wrong decision. I don't know whether I would have said that to Wayne if the roles had been reversed. It was a sad thing because we'd been very, very close friends for years and years. I'm pretty angry at myself for the role I played in letting our friendship separate a little bit. Perhaps Gene played some small part in it. I'm not pointing the finger at him at all. Maybe it should have been me that should have just shut up and said, hey, yeah, okay. The only disappointing thing in the whole case was what the Broncos wanted me to do. They wanted me to say at that stage, I didn't see. They wanted me to step away and say, look, I've decided that I don't want to captain the Broncos this year. I want to be away from, I'm going to be away from the club of rep football, and I'd be pleased if someone else would take over that's going to be there full time. That would have been an easy way to step out of it, but for me, that's not what I'm about. I've never tried to hide from anything. That, you know, it was explained to me that I wouldn't have to be embarrassed. I don't care if I'm embarrassed. I just want the truth told.
He's the opportunity. He might go all the way.
So what went wrong last Thursday at the place many thought would be Wally's retirement home, Broncos headquarters?
We weren't in the position to make the same offer that we made last year, or else we wouldn't be able to keep some of our other players. So we've had to make a tough decision, and in this case, unfortunately, Wally won't be with us next year.
It wasn't a great shock to many insiders that months of negotiations had finally broken down. Nevertheless, John Rebo was feeling the pressure as he dropped the axe.
This has been easily the toughest decision I've had to make since I've been at the club. You know, as far as Wally goes, he's a legend, and he's done a lot for rugby league for Queensland the last 10 years, and unfortunately I'm the one that has to bear the bad news.
That press conference started one of the most dramatic days in Queensland League history. By comparison, politically, it was as stunning as Joe Bielke-Peterson's resignation. There must have been 50 media personnel waiting for a red Mercedes-Benz to arrive at Gilbert Park on Thursday afternoon. Lewis looked bemused. It's known he's bitter, he's resentful, but he handled the probing with aplomb.
It's quite easily the most disappointing moment of my life. And I won't be saying any more than this, any more than expressing my disappointment, because the team have got a very important game.
The news spread quickly. Dozens watched from the sidelines as Wayne Bennett tried to prepare his side for a preliminary final. But Bennett too was set upon. After all, he'd been the one who decided to sack Lewis as captain.
You know, we've had our ups and downs. Early in the season I made my decision. There was nothing personal then, there's nothing personal now. I mean, if we can't afford to keep him here, if that's the situation, or we can't afford to stay at the price that was offered, well, that's his decision.
What I was disappointed in more than anything else was that I wasn't sacked by Wayne, because he'd said, and I think I can just about quote exactly his words, that he was responsible for all the hiring and firing of football talent in that club. He had the sole responsibility and had that given to him by all the directors of the club. Now, when I was given the axe, it was by John Rebo, and I probably would have preferred if Wayne had to come up to me and said, listen, I think that your football days are finished, or that you're a bad influence on the club, or your playing days are over, you're a has-been, and we don't want you anymore. All I wanted was a straight-out answer, not some petty offer, the offer that was given to me, which John Rebo knew I was going to reject.
Picked up by Stewart. They've got a fair few men to spare out there. Daly coming back inside. Daly now gets it out to Belcher. Belcher decides to go himself. Bradley Clyde. Clyde on his way through now. Duffy slipped over. He's no chance of getting him. And here's another try for the Canberra Raiders. And that makes...
I often deliberated whether I was made a scapegoat. I'm not really sure. There's obviously a lot of pressure on Bennett. There was a lot of pressure on John Rebo as well. But I didn't think that the Broncos' failure in those 2 years was solely my fault. Now, I looked at it and there was only one change made in all that time, and that was my sacking. And I thought, surely it can't be one bloke's captaincy that's caused this club to fail so miserably. I think the biggest problem with myself and Wayne Bennett was that we just couldn't agree on a nice middleman area. By that I mean he had his ideals, what he wanted me to achieve, and I've always been a player that's really done what he wanted on a football field, and I believe that's what's made me so successful. I believe that by playing my own roles at any stage during a game and trying things that I think will be successful, you really can't plan a defensive method against that. Now, plenty of people have been successful in defence against me, but you can't plan it. It's just spur-of-the-moment stuff that you've got to react to. I prefer to stick to my own methods that have worked for me in the past. And players like Dale Shearer, Peter Jackson have been the same. They're guys that really have been able to do anything at any stage during a game and more times than not been very successful. I think that the three of us would probably be more successful in teams not coached by Wayne. And in saying that, I'm not for one moment trying to indicate that he's not a good coach, because he has proved in the past that he is a very good coach. But it's quite obvious that I'm best suited to a team where Wayne Bennett's not involved.
There's the break. Boyd He needs a clean play of the ball here. Sterling pops the pass to Lewis, and Lewis is in for the try.
Murray attacking nicely, rucking the ball up.
This is Lewis. Lewis on the bustle now. Gets it away to Pearce. Pearce gets it back to Lewis. Lewis over underneath the posts.
The punches have started. It's all on here now, Lane Park. Both sides are coming in.
Lewis, a little chip. Lewis gets it back. Chance. Oh yes, Jackson. Beautiful play from Lewis. Lewis, the crowd have gone up here in Australia right away again. Gary Jack gets it onto Eddinghausen. Out, he'll score. Under Bobby Linder gets it to Lewis. Lewis will score. Australia again. Lewis under the post.
The ball has gone out to Curry. Curry comes back in field. Over the 22. Try time for Lewis. Lewis scores.
Well, let's see what the Aussies can do now. It goes to Lewis. Lewis throws a little dummy, then a high pass over for Sheridan. Sheridan makes the pass. Oh, look at this. I talked about a try.
This is Lewis now. And Lewis is only about... Oh, they're throwing punches in there on that tackle on Lewis.
It comes to Shearer. Oh, there's another high shot.
Oh, what about that big hit from Lewis?
There's always a lot of natural jealousy between Australia and New Zealand, and that's certainly on the rugby league field as well. One player in particular in the last Test series made it just about his goal every game to be warned by the referee 5 or 6 times. Now, he got away with it. Perhaps that's the right thing to do. Maybe it's the wrong thing to do. Graham Lowe said that it was the wrong thing to do, and he was embarrassed to be a Kiwi by some of their players' behaviour. Now, I'm not saying that the players themselves are doing the wrong thing. Perhaps they're being instructed to play that way.
Both captains are out. Huey McGahn for the Kiwis, Lewis for Australia, and Tennant laying down the law. Oh, and Lewis not happy.
One of the downfalls, without any doubt, of the New Zealand side were the idiotic tactics that were employed by some of the players, and especially towards Lewis. You know, trying to single him out. I don't know what the plan was. I don't know. I couldn't really care. All I know, it was bloody ridiculous, and it didn't work, and it played right into Australia's hands. Like, the game is a hard, tough game. To me, it's a high-speed collision sport. You know, to a certain extent, it's very, very tough, and it's played by guys that are plenty tough as well. But the treatment that was dished out by some of my own countrymen in that particular game, especially towards Wally, was idiotic. Like, there's no part, and that to me, like that, Wally probably got battered and bruised, and I actually think he broke his arm in that particular game, and he certainly probably had some uncomfortable moments throughout the game. But he thrives on that. He thrives on it. He just laughed at them.
Lewis refuses to risk an early comeback against medical advice.
If I do come back too early, I'm only going to break it again and have to sit at home for a couple of months and go through more operations. So I think I'd be wiser to let the tour go and really make sure that the arm's 100% for next year.
Lewis has a new fiberglass cast on the arm after the broken bone shifted slightly. He admits it's now a race against time to make the tour which has basically driven him to continue his playing career.
Wally was ruled out of the team by the Australian medical officer, Dr. Gibbs, Nathan Gibbs. And prior to the medical examination, I rang Nathan Gibbs, and I said to him, Nathan, if you have any reservations about Wally's fitness, I would appreciate it if you give him the benefit of the doubt, because I think we owe him that. Nathan Gibbs said, yes, I'll do that. He rang me before he announced to the press and said, look, there's no way I could pass him as fit because his arm is broken and he's not, and as a matter of fact, there should be a reassessment in probably anything from 2 to 4 weeks. He said, on your say-so, if he'd have been 90% fit, I would have passed him. Now, if anything, Wally was given a little bit of an edge.
I'd heard persistent rumours that my arm injury wasn't going to fit. Now, there's been heated debate since that day of who was right and who was wrong. I eventually had to front the Australian Rugby League boss Ken Arthurson with my claims. I told them of my claims and that I had the proof. There were a couple of journalists that were with me that day when a rugby league official said to them that I wasn't going to go on the tour. This official told the two journalists who come and passed the information to me. They were both prepared to sign statutory declarations to prove that. I fronted Ken Arthurson about it, and I didn't at all want to embarrass anyone in particular. All I wanted was a fair go, and I didn't think that I was getting one in this stage.
The fact of the matter is that I really think that Wally was incorrect there in saying the things he did, because I've got the highest possible regard for Dr. Gibbs, not only as a medical officer but as a person, and I thought that it was an unnecessary slur on Dr. Gibbs, and Wally and I really did fall out on that particular issue. But you know, I can understand, in saying all of that, you've got to understand how disappointed the guy must have been. He was all set to establish a record, which there's no doubt in the world he would have done. He'd have been selected had he been fit.
He said that he had spoken to somebody who, as a rugby league official, passed what was said more as a personal view than as a rugby league official's claims. I had to accept those. I'd given Ken my beliefs on the incident, and he'd returned them. Missing out on the tour was an extreme disappointment. The thing that was hardest to swallow out of everything that happened and all the disappointment, I couldn't understand why I was forced to face a medical test at a completely different time than any other player in the team.
Wally has always had that remarkable propensity to get people's back up, and he certainly did get people offside. For anybody to say differently, they'd be having themselves on. But, you know, over the years I've been under enormous criticism to relieve Wally Lewis of the captaincy of Australia, but I've never succumbed to that sort of temptation to do it, because I honestly believe that he was the best man for the job, and I think he proved it. And the biggest thing that I can always say in favour of Wally Lewis, he was always proud to pull on the jumper, the green and gold jumper of Australia, and he never ever let us down.
Watching the King for the last time. In the Rangers. They throw it long with Fiddle with the grubber kick. Here's O'Connor on the fly with Johns. Johns is there. The cutout pass to Lewis. Meninga. Hobbs into the hole. He'll go for the line. He's got Alexander's measure. He's in. Oh, Paul Hoff, that's great stuff. Alexander was left grabbing at oxygen. Langer will have to hurry. Actually, he's done it pretty well into space. Can he tow through? Stewart kicks it ahead. It's picked up, and you can shut the gate. Nicky Hancock's in to Izzard, and he gives it to Salvatore, and O'Connor's got space. He's in. That's the equaliser. That's touch, so this will be play on, and it's come in the hands of Fairley. They've got everywhere. Hasler's off for the line. Ken Hancock Hancock get him? As he slid over, is it a double movement? He's going toward a try. Hasler's made his ground. Walters now gives it to Peter Jackson again. Over the top to Langer. Now he's got big Paul Hock. Meninga gets it back. And they're a chance now. They're a chance now. Shearer's on his own. He's in. He's in. They hung off him. And Queensland have finally cracked them. 12 all.
I've always said that he was the difference between New South Wales and Queensland and the state of origin.
He was a thinking man's footballer, the ultimate thinking man's footballer.
One thing about Wally, he wouldn't ask anyone to do anything he wouldn't do, and one thing you can be guaranteed with Wally's on the field, you know that here's one guy, if you get stuck, he will look after you. Well, not look after you, but back you up.
People in New South Wales hated Wally Lewis, and the more they hated him, the better he played. And he just had that tremendous knack just to when the chips were down, was Wally Lewis for the Queenslanders to come of age, and he just did that series in, series out.
Wally was their leader, not just in the dressing room, not just in the game, but also in the team camp, the hotel, also off the field, also away from the state of origin arena.
There are times in the game when a guy will come along and everybody says, oh, you can't let him get bigger than the game, or you can't let him get bigger than the club. He was bigger than the club. He was bigger than the game up there, and he is bigger than the game. You just got to accept it. That's just, you know, you don't want too many of them coming along, but Wally, you know, as far as I'm concerned anyway, Wally, like, there's Wally Lewis, and then sort of coming along after them, there's Queensland, the Broncos, everyone else. Wally was able to get himself into a position, and he's been able to do it during his playing career, where he has actually been bigger than the game.
I really had to wrestle with my own thoughts and wonder whether we were going to be champions in 1991. Thankfully, that did happen, and I got the opportunity to retire from State of Origin football where I wanted to, and that was at Lang Park in front of a crowd that appreciated Queensland's success in that game. And for me, if I could write a storybook and title it any way that I wanted and write that last chapter, it couldn't have been any more perfect than that final night when we managed to wrap up the series.